look at all things canon in our biggest and best movie franchises. This week we're continuing our adventure into the Indiana Jones franchise, continuing with Temple of Doom. As always, you're joined by myself, Fodder Tom, and my co-host, Fodder Phill. I'll allow him to give you the old hello.
Hello.
There it is. Nice and professional and on time. So today we're going to dive into the Temple of Doom, but what we like to do, as always, is just do a bit of a what's canon on with each other. So I'll start with going, Phil, what's canon on?
Well, I don't have a lot this week for you, Tom, unfortunately,
Okay.
but I will give you a couple of little tidbits without going down the rabbit hole of all of our friendship and all of our lore. So on my drive home today, I heard a classic song. You might remember it. And every time I hear this song, Tom, I think of you.
Okay.
And it is. I'll give you one line from the song, and you'll instantly recognize what it is. So the line from the song is, "I need to praise you like I should." And every time I hear this song, Tom, I think of you. And the reason for that is because I don't know how long it went on for, but you confided in me, and obviously that was a private conversation which I'm going to share with the world now on this podcast. That you fought for many years. That the line for that song was actually, "I need to raise you like a shirt." So I don't know what sort of sexual weird fantasy you were living in, where this singer was just lifting up his shirt and swaying around with his midriff on show. But every time I hear that song now, I think of you. And it brings a lot of enjoyment to my life. I really do. I think they should actually do a re-release of that song, Tom, with the correct lyrics or the superior lyrics.
Superior lyrics. I mean,
100%.
coming off last week's, the week before's episode with Nazis, I don't think you can use the word superior anymore on this podcast.
That's true. There's a lot of shirt lifting Nazis out there. That's what I've heard.
Yeah, no, that is 100% a true story. It has evolved from praise you like a shirt. Well, it was raise you like a shirt to praise you like a shirt to praise you like I should, which, as everyone knows, is the famous Fatboy Slim song. Did I ever tell you about the Natalie Imbruglia song?
No.
So you know the song Torn?
Mm-hmm.
I used to think that song was called Tom, and I used to think that the lyrics were, "Tom, I'm a little late," and I was like, "Oh my god, this guy who's called Tom is her thing, and the song might be about me." And so the line, "The perfect sky is torn," I used to think was, "The perfect guy is Tom."
Oh, it works, you know. It works.
Honestly, right? You change those lyrics, then you're never going back.
Well, there's one for you that like, I'm a massive Eminem fan, you know.
Yeah.
Like, that's so original, but I loved Eminem of that generation.
A white person from the 90s.
I'm a white boy. I like Eminem, but I used to love Stan, the song Stan, and I thought for absolute years, just by listening to it. Obviously, I could recite Eminem lyrics like the back of my hand most of the time. I thought the chorus of that was, "My tears run cold." And to me, that made total sense because it was like she's crying. She's been crying for so long that they've went cold, and like there was a window with rain running down, and like, no, it's my tea's gone cold. And for me, that takes a little bit of something away from that song, because I imagine a cup of tea sitting there getting cold, and I don't think it's as powerful as a lyric.
Yeah, which is mad because now that you've said a cup of tea, I was about to say it's weird that you had like tea as in the food that we would eat in Britain of being like the afternoon dinner. That's gone cold, but no, that makes sense. It's a cup of tea. So even though I corrected you on that, I'm still wrong. Like,
yeah.
Do you listen to music in shuffle mode? Like, if you just play some music, would you put it on shuffle?
I don't listen to a lot of music, you know.
Okay.
For me, I go to YouTube and I've got my kind of common songs, and it just repeats those and just goes through them. I don't have like a playlist on my phone or anything like that. Maybe I'm a bit weird. I'd usually just whack the digital radio on, but no, I don't. If I had to choose, I don't think I would put shuffle on, because I think I'm a bit more. I like to know what's coming next, and I like to plan. And I'm the type of guy where I will go back and play a song multiple times. I'll go skip backwards. We need to repeat that song. I need to hear that tea going cold again.
I'm very much of the same thing. Like, if I hear a banger and like it comes to the end, I'm not ready for this to be over. Like, I'm still living this high of this song. I will play it again. Anyway, so me and my partner were walking the dogs and we were listening to the new Linkin Park album. And she puts it on, and I was like, right, you can be in charge of this. Like, all you need to do is give us a headphone, and I'll get involved. Because she was really excited about this album. And then I was like, this album's weird. Like, whoever put this together is so, like, they have got no flow. I found out she was playing the album in shuffle, and I was like, oh, that's weird. I says,
That's crazy.
I says, that's weird. I says, like, why have you done that? Like, do you realise that albums are, like, structured to be a certain way because they bounce off each other? And she went, oh, I always play albums on shuffle. And I went, what? Like, and straight away, so me and you have a favourite album from college, which is Sam's Town from The Killers. And that album is built in such a way that it tells a story. And
it plays beautifully from start to finish.
I was rocked by this, that like those songs were going on shuffle, and I didn't know what to do. So then I said, can we put it off shuffle? And then there was songs bouncing off each other, like the guy at the end of one song would say, now we're going to do this, and it would feed into it. I went, this makes more sense. Like, this album was almost a 0 out of 10 for me, and all of a sudden it's now like quite high up.
Interestingly as well, though, that kind of ties in nicely with Canon, I'd say, because that's the intention of the artist to go from start to finish, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think like because we've been doing this podcast, that's very much been on my forefront of like, how should something be played, how should something be listened to, how should something be viewed, and just hearing that wasn't being played like start to finish in the right order. It's like watching a film. It's like watching a series and putting it on shuffle. Like, it would be crazy. Yeah. You would never do it. So my what's Canon On, I'm the same as you. I've got some things, but I thought I would do something a bit different this week. Just talk about some movies that I've watched. So I went to see Red One last week. Have you seen this film advertised?
I have seen this film. Yeah, it looks awful, I've got to say. So I'm curious to see what your synopsis of it is.
So I didn't mind it. Like, I didn't come away from that film disgusted like everyone else is. So I went to see it like the day it came out, and I was like, I was with the kids, and I went, oh, like I fancy going to the cinema. And I saw this was on, and I was like, what's the harm going to be watching this Christmas film? It can't be that bad. And I think it was like the start of November I went to see it. And like, I walked out and thought, oh yeah, like it was alright. Like, you know, I wasn't going to watch it ever again. It wasn't going to win the Oscars, but hey, it ticked the box on a Christmas movie of this generation. My kid came out of that hating it. He went, that was the worst film I've ever seen. And I went, really? And he went, I don't understand why anything was the way it was, and I just thought it was terrible. So I don't know if my movie tastes now are becoming like, I'm not really bothered, like I'll just sit and watch something from in the cinema. But yeah, he tore it to shreds. He wasn't keen.
Maybe you've just went full circle, because it does feel like a very much, you know, like you said, just get the kids in the cinema, get some popcorn. Let's see Dwayne the Rock Johnson in another movie where he plays the same character again. But maybe you've went full circle. You've went from, you know, being a child and enjoying that to now being, you know, a 75-year-old man as you are, Tom. Yeah. To enjoying childlike movies again, and your son just is more developed, more emotionally mature than you.
Yeah, maybe I've given up. Like, maybe that's what it is. Maybe like you say, I went in, I'd seen the trailer, I was like, I watched the trailer, it's got J.K. Simmons in as a ripped Santa, like, alright, whatever, like, I can get on board with that. Maybe because I saw the trailer, I wasn't shocked by anything. I wasn't like, what is this film doing? It kind of, the trailer told us everything I need to know. It was by the same guy who did Jumanji, so I was like, like, this is just gonna be mindless. But yeah, it's being called like a really bad film by critics, which I don't know. Films like that I don't think should be part of the critic stuff, because I just feel like it's not there to be criticised. It's there to just fill a gap in the schedule. Like, it's just filler. That's all it is. And you know what it is? It filled my weekend fine. The other film I want to talk about is a horror film called When Evil Lurks. Have you seen this film?
I have not even heard of this one.
I wanted to just watch something there I'd never seen before, never heard of before, didn't watch a trailer. So it's a foreign film. I think it's Argentinian. And I don't know if I can call it a movie in the sense of... it didn't really have like a start, middle and end. It just kind of plonks you into like a scenario and plays the scenario out. It's about demons, so there's some gory bits in it. There's some nice effects in it, some practical effects in it. So I think it'll be right up your street. It doesn't have like a real, I guess, resolution at the end. It's very much just a case of what would happen in this situation. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really good horror film. There was some bits where like I like pretty much screamed, as in like, oh my god, that is disgusting. Like, what's happening? There were some really tense moments. I would really recommend it. I think it was a banger of a film.
It's interesting that you've had you brought two new movies to the table, and complete opposite ends of the scale, I must say as well.
Yeah. So
what was the name of that movie again?
When Evil Lurks. Yeah. So we'll jump into the Temple of Doom. So something I didn't mention about the Raiders of the Lost Ark, which I'm gonna mention. Did you know that film won 4 Oscars?
I did not know that.
Yeah.
That is a great little fact to start the podcast off. I'd say.
So the Raiders of the Lost Ark won 4 Oscars for Best Art Direction, Best Sound, Best Film Editing, and Best Effects. So my question is, do you agree that the Raiders of the Lost Ark deserved those? And obviously, I don't know what else it was competing against, but if you just judge it out of its merits, do you think they're a fair shout?
Run me through those awards again.
So Best Art Direction, Best Sound, Best Film Editing, and Best Effects.
There's a couple of easy wins in there with, for example, Best Sound, because we've talked already about the orchestra and things like that. Effects, yes, rant and rave about practical effects, and there is some amazing practical effects in that movie. And little random things like real life snakes behind glass and deaf rats being used. So yes, fully on board with that. Best editing, did you say?
Best Film Editing, yeah.
I mean, how do you even begin to win an award for that?
I don't know. Like, I feel like
all of them are edited.
Yeah, exactly.
I've never watched a movie and thought it's edited. It's terrible.
Maybe it's the plane going like from place to place. Maybe that counts as an edit because it's a transition, isn't it? It's a transition where it's got film over the top of an animation.
I mean, it doesn't blow my mind out. Living in 2024, that doesn't really blow my mind.
But I mean, I don't think Star Wars ever won Best Editing. Again, Star Wars are bread and butter. I don't think that one. That was famous for having those like wipe transitions, which were like PowerPoint.
Yes.
That never won an Oscar.
I mean, that is terrible editing, to be fair.
Yeah.
It is like George Lucas found the PowerPoint button and was like, holy crap.
Yeah. Right, so this film, 1984, directed by Steven Spielberg. This one won an Oscar for Best Visual Effects, and it had the music by John Williams, and its length is 1:58. So with this film, did it meet your expectations?
Honestly, I'm gonna start off with how I mean to continue here, but I massively preferred this over Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Wow. I hated this movie.
Oh my god! Well, this. I thought this podcast was going to be a nice, quick, easy one, but this might turn into a 5-hour argument here.
I hated this movie.
Okay. You want to hear what I've wrote as my prediction for you for this movie?
Go for it, yeah.
So, I've put that because if the audience go back and if we've got that loyal one listener who stick with us from day one.
Hi, Dad.
You made a prediction. Sorry, you made an observation in the last movie, and you had a lot of critiques, and you said that you didn't like various things about the movie. But I think all of those things are improved on in this movie and specifically resolved. For example, the music is more original. It doesn't immediately scream Star Wars at you. Indiana Jones speaks multiple various languages in this movie that you weren't a big fan of in the first movie. Characters, and we'll go into this as we'll go through, but for me, characters have much more clearly defined roles in this movie. We've got a love interest, we've got a sidekick, and it's very obvious who they are because one's a woman and one's a small male child. And those things I think that you didn't like about the previous movie or the first movie, and they're all improved upon for this movie and various other things as well that we'll get into. So I am shocked that you thought it got worse. All of the things you didn't like are fixed, and you hate it even more. You don't know. You're blowing hot and cold, Tom. You don't know what you want.
Maybe I do. Maybe I am. Maybe it is me. It's the music. Yeah, I had the same note. Like the music, yeah, is very much like they've realized they've got a franchise, and they've realized that they need to distinguish it as its own entity. I said the music. I had down that the music in this is much better. What was your second point? I've got characters. What was the second one?
Indiana Jones speaks various other languages in this movie.
Pisses off straight away because it's a prequel. So why couldn't he speak other languages in the Raiders of the Lost Ark?
How do you know he knows Egyptian?
Well, I feel like Egyptian's more like in a wheelhouse of an archaeologist at that time period than Japanese is. I don't feel like people or Chinese or whatever Asian language it is. Apologies.
Yeah.
I feel like
Indian speaks Indian as well.
Yeah, exactly. Like surely that's more in his wheelhouse to be like, oh, like ancient tombs, Egyptians, like that's an archaeologist's bread and butter, right? Like, there's no way you're an archaeologist and you don't spend 2 years in Egypt. Like, it just doesn't happen. I couldn't believe that he could speak all these languages. It's like Steven Spielberg read that note and went, oh, I'll just make them speak languages. And I'm like, but it doesn't make sense. It does not make sense. And I don't know, maybe he got criticism for him being racist, and that was like, oh, well, we'll have him speak different languages. I don't know, but yeah, that didn't wash for me. I would have preferred he was more ignorant here than he was in the first one to show actual character growth. I don't think there's any character growth yet. I think there's a lot of plot holes in this film.
Let's not put a pin in that, but let's just keep that sentence in your mind as we go through, and we'll come back to that because I've got a very good point to raise about that, plot holes.
Characters, the woman.
Yes.
My God, like she was 10 times worse than Marion. Like, she's called Willie, which what a stupid name for a character.
Giggle every time you hear that.
Did you know it's Steven Spielberg's wife?
What at the time, or he married her after that?
They were canoodling on set. Like, he wasn't married at that point, but things were hot and heavy. Like, there's a reason she had that job, I think.
I did not know that. That's interesting.
So yeah, I found the film, found it boring at times. I've marked here that it didn't get into the actual journey until 28 minutes in. Like, we had no idea what this film was doing. Whereas the first film, it sets up the movie perfectly. This film does not. This film just starts with what's essentially James Bond. In the opening, he's wearing a white tux. That's the same tuxedo out of Goldfinger in James Bond.
Here's a little side quest for you. I watched this with my kids.
Yeah.
And like, obviously, like you said, 1 minute in, Indiana Jones appears on screen. He's wearing his white tux, looking all sharp. My daughter looks at him, and as serious as can be, says, "Is that Gordon Ramsay?" And I'm like, "No." At first, I thought she was talking about all the Asian men who were sitting opposite him on the table, and I was like, "Which Asian man are you talking about here, darling?" No, she meant Harrison Ford. I think it was just the white sort of chef look for her.
Yeah.
But yeah, she thought it was Gordon Ramsay, and I thought that was amazing.
No, that's good.
You've fast forwarded through the first 2-3 minutes of that movie, because if we go back to our first review of Raiders of the Lost Ark, you have that immediately. We'll have the graphic match of Paramount logo, and that straight away. This is what I'm thinking. You're missing these key little nods.
I've wrote
opening cut. Well, that's good. But yeah, but then this time it's on I think it's on a big gong, or it's on a big wall art, or whatever it may be, and then it cuts to Willie making her musical number. But did you notice as well that
Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, his name's splashed all over it? Yeah,
splashed all over it. But it was also the text was in front and behind Willie, that edited it in such a way, which I think in '84 was pretty big. So the text wasn't just plastered over was an overlay. She was actually in between them. The text. That was again a lovely little nod to me, and like we don't really think about these things too much in cinema these days. But like, I mean, I haven't watched every single movie in the '80s. However, I do feel like that's a bit of a kind of a niche thing to do, and I appreciated it. I enjoyed that little tidbit, and I thought that's the kind of thing that I would expect Best Editing to win. But unfortunately, it didn't win it, according to you.
No, just best visual effects, which I don't know if they kind of binned off the editing award and thought, well, it's technically effect, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, yeah, but if you go back and the two listeners that we've got at home, they can just play that first 2 minutes of the movie.
I shall not be going back, because this film just didn't do it for us. So what's the setting of this film? Where are we? What's the year and what's the place?
I have no idea. So it's a prequel.
It's Shanghai, 1935.
35. When's Raiders of the Lost Ark, though?
Hold on, let me just lick my finger. So it's 1936. This is a year difference, which isn't much of a prequel.
Did it need to be a prequel? That's one thing I was wondering.
Absolutely not. If this
why
film,
not?
Because if it was
why make it a prequel? Why do any of that?
No idea. Why not continue it on? Maybe it was part of that old. If we make it a prequel, we don't have to acknowledge anything from the first film. Maybe it was that kind of thing. Or
Yeah,
maybe,
fix your mistakes.
or maybe George Lucas spoke to him and went, I'm thinking about doing this, and then Steven Spielberg went, all right then, let's crack on with that. I'll do that.
My only thinking when I was just spitballing this in my head as I was thinking about it was because the third movie, not again spoilers, involves Nazis again, I believe.
Yep.
So maybe it was just a case of we don't want to do two Nazi movies in a row. That might be a bit much.
Maybe, but I think what's good about this film, I mean, it's like kind of the Star Wars problem again, isn't it? Like, imagine if they said, "Oh, we don't want to do Darth Vader two things in a row." And they're basically Nazis. They're stormtroopers, for Christ's sakes. Like, there was no problems with it there.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's a valid point. If I'm honest, I think Nazis still would have sold as the villain because I think it was still close enough to World War Two that people would be like, "Oh, those Nazis!" Like, "Oh, shake fist at them." So I would think it was still fine.
Yeah, Nazis bad.
Nazis bad. Right. Anyway, so opening scene. So we have the Everything Goes song, which is that a wink at the audience? I kind of felt it was.
Uh-huh.
As in like, oh, we've got a sequel, we've got a bigger budget, anything can happen. I found this scene grating. Like, I found it really grating. So everyone was really calm in the restaurant, even though there's two guys that are literally like pointing guns at each other and like going nuts. Like, everyone's just like, this is fine, it's all good. Like, how's no one spotting this? No one's making a fuss at all.
What one thing initially I didn't like was that Willie went through that sort of door, like stars in their eyes style, to disappear, and it turned into a whole cabaret show in like what looked like a massive auditorium theater type thing with like unlimited space, and none of those people in the restaurant could see what was going on there. Like, they were just sitting there.
Exactly.
They ran through that door and then they were dancing, and everybody in the restaurant was like, "What's going on?" Like, we're just sitting here, and then they came back, and then they started clapping, like, "Oh, it was great." Like, but they didn't see anything. They saw shit.
One thing I wanted to ask you. So Indy gets poisoned, and so it's got an antidote. The antidote goes flying across the floor, and then people start kicking it around. Is that the first time that's happened in cinema? Because that's a cliche kind of effect, right? Like,
Yeah.
someone kicking a bottle, and it's like, oh, they get close to it and they can't pick it up. Like, I'm curious to know, is that the first time that has been done?
I mean, we'll have to. I mean, we'll put it out there to the audience if they know any of us it has happened. But I certainly can't think of anything beforehand. There's plenty of, comic relief, comedic effect type things like that.
Yeah, I think it's open for the audience more than anything, because I could Google it, but I feel like it's going to take us far too long to figure out. But I wonder if that was like kind of a first iteration of that. It'd be interesting to know. So I've noted down as well that the opening is goofier than Raiders of the Lost Ark. I found Raiders of the Lost Ark's opening to be very like stoic and who's this mysterious man, whereas this was very much like they had that spinning thing in the middle of the table where they were like passing stuff along, then the whole scene where he's kicking the bottle and that's going everywhere. Like, just found it like really childish, and like everyone marks this film as being a darker film, and it is to an extent, but I just found that the opening was like, this wouldn't have captured me straight away. I'd have been like, oh, we're regressing here as a film.
Yeah, but that, I think we'll have to establish what we talked about at the start of the episode, which is, what are you going to see this movie and expecting? Because if you're going to expecting an action adventure, it's not quite that. It isn't that. I'm going to put this in its own category, Tom. Its whole category on its own. And after watching Temple of Doom, and obviously watching it quite in close proximity to Raiders of the Lost Ark, in my headcanon, that the Indiana Jones movies are parodies. The whole thing is a parody movie, a parody of various movies, and I'll go into them in a minute as we go along. But that perspective totally changes my enjoyment of the franchise, and I think that's if you go at the cinema to watch a scary movie, and there's an opening scene where there's singing and dancing and all this ridiculous things happening, you take enjoyment from that. You're not there to take it too seriously, and I think that's where I'm going with this. And I think that it's interesting because we'll not go on to the other movies yet, but we will as we continue through the podcast. But that's kind of made me think very differently about the whole Indiana Jones franchise, because it pretty much means that he can go anywhere he wants and fight any villain he wants, extraterrestrial, whatever he likes, time traveler, anything. I don't care, because it's a parody. It's a parody of what the movies are and what the kind of what the popular movies are, basically.
Okay.
What's your thoughts on that? Do you consider Indiana Jones a parody?
I'd never thought of it like that. No, I always thought that Indiana Jones was the base and everything else based itself on. Like, this this franchise has got so many mentions in other films and, like, not honorees. What's it called? Where you like
Homages.
homages. Yeah, thank you. It's got so many homages like throughout everything. Like, I think Family Guy pretty much parodies it at least once in every series. There's the Uncharted games, as I mentioned in the last episode, which is very much inspired by these movies. Yeah, I never thought of it as a parody. I always thought of it as a serious adventure movie for the family. I always see these as family films, and this second one is definitely not a family film. Like, I remember watching this as a kid and being terrified, which is why I was so excited to watch it, because I thought, oh my god, like, me as a kid was like haunted by this film and what it did. But then watching it back, I was like, oh, like, yeah, it's still graphic, but I don't know. I found some of the substance was like lagging.
Yeah, but I think like there's loads of movies, and I've made a note of a few, and I haven't seen all of these, but when I did a little bit of research into it, the main character for most of these movies, I think we can see the comparison between Indiana Jones and these characters, and also the themes of the movies. So you've got classic movies like Charlton Heston movies, things like the Ten Commandments, which is obvious correlation there. The Greatest Show on Earth, Ben-Hur. And if you look at the characters in these movies and what they're wearing, it's pretty much, pal, Indiana Jones. Just the outfit, the hat, the suit, everything we've talked about before. It's just a homage to all of those films, and I think that what my understanding of it is now, and certainly it's a bit more headcanon than it is fact right now. So please don't quote me on this exactly. Or if Steven Spielberg's listening, he's a big fan of the podcast. If you want to weigh in and give us the actual facts here, Steven, go ahead. But I think Steven Spielberg was like obviously a big fan of those growing up as a child and taking those enjoyments out of it. And I think that he's basically had fun with this, but paying homage to some of his favorite movies or the movies that have inspired him to become the director he is. And that's my perspective on it now. And I think that when you say it's not a family movie, I can't believe you've said that, because the little sidekick, I absolutely love the little sidekick. I remember watching this movie. I remember watching this movie as a kid and thinking Short Round was cool as fuck. I wanted to be Short Round. I thought he was absolutely class.
No, I agree. I think Short Round is there for the kids. So, not that I ever thought I would ever bring this up again, but you know how you mentioned that he's a paedophile in the first film?
Yeah.
He steals this kid and he steals this woman, right? Like, she's kidnapped by Indiana Jones.
I mean, he says, I'll let you tag along, and she doesn't object too harshly.
But isn't she on the plane at that point?
Yes.
So it's like, I'll let you tag along, or you can jump out the plane that's in the
You
sky.
can jump out the plane. Yeah. I mean, you're right. You are right. But, I mean, wouldn't you go on a crazy-ass adventure? Plus, I think maybe part of her character, not that there's too much, to dissect with her. She is just the love interest, I think, mostly. But she's also obviously very into the diamonds element, and the riches that might come out of it. So I think that maybe there's just that element of, oh, I can go on an adventure here and maybe get something out of this. So I think that I didn't even think about that too much, to be honest. I thought that the introduction of a little child sidekick was more to not reinforce the idea of Indiana Jones as a bad guy, to be more like, no, he's a good guy. He rescued this kid. He saved him.
He did not rescue this kid. This kid tried to steal from him, and Indiana Jones was like, "You work for me now." Like,
yeah, you owe me it. Like, drive my car, child.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this is like, there's some questions there, and again, I think it's very much like, don't look too close, please, because we're just trying to make a movie of like an adventure. But when you start pulling away the layers, it's like, why have you got a kid? Like, why have you got this responsibility? Like, don't you have a job in like England or somewhere? Like, why you got this kid like trailing around with you all the time? Why have you hired this kid and not paying him? It's very dangerous territory. And then the fact that he steals this woman, because she constantly says like, I want to go home, like I hate it here, like she's always referring to like how she's a glamorous singer and he's took her to this like place in India that's just horrible. Like, I don't know. So we're on a plane. Plane's got some goons on it from the bad guys. They jump out. No one wakes up until the doors open like crazy, absolutely nuts. And then when the plane's going down, they jump out on a boat.
And then can we also say one thing when he we have the line of Dr. Jones wake up, and I couldn't just get the song of
Dr. Jones.
Was it
Dr.
a pub?
Jones.
Dr. Wake up now, wake up now.
That would have been maybe they Aqua stole it. Big fans of the podcast.
Yeah.
So do you know about the fridge in Indiana Jones 4?
Yeah.
I find the fridge more believable in this boat. And this boat gets a free pass, and I despise it. Like, I was ready to kind of turn around and go, like, on Reddit, even though I'm banned, on Reddit, to turn around and say, why is everyone giving this fridge stick when this boat gets a free ride of him jumping stupidly out and doesn't fall out the boat? Like, there's actually no way that boat does not go above his head and he hits the ground him first. There's just no way.
The landing for me as well, when you watch the landing, it's like, holy shit, that bounces off that ground.
Would have killed them all.
Yeah, they would have been broken, but the spines, 100%.
So yeah, like, I know the fridge is coming, I know that's going to be in 4, but I'm ready to forgive and move on when I know stuff like that's happening already. So I think you're right, maybe it is a parody, because if that wasn't a comedy film, I would have laughed my ass off.
Yeah. And there's plenty of ridiculous scenes in, historic movies like this where they do something insane. Like even Tarzan swinging from a vine, which we've seen in the first movie. Like those things happen, and you don't take them too seriously. But it's a parody. It's a parody of those type of action heroes. He's Indiana Jones. He can jump out of that movie, and it's not because he's an action hero. It's because he lives in this parody fantasy world where he can do anything he really wants. He's the Batman of this universe, as we've established.
Fair. No, that's fair. Is there anything else you want to discuss about the opening before we move into what I've named Act 1, since this is just Act Nothing?
No, I think we've covered off all things nicely.
Okay, so the plane crashes, they do a bit of trekking, or they go on the boat some more, I can't remember. And they come across a man. I put that Indiana Jones seems to see this man's culture and understand exactly who he is, which shows him being more tolerant than he was in the first film, which again is not character growth, it's character regression. So did he become racist in the next year? Like, what is that crack?
Yeah, good point.
He can speak the language, like he understands the culture with the food, like. When he denies the food, he's like, you're upsetting them and stuff like that. Yep. Like, again, this film would have made much more sense as a sequel rather than a prequel.
Well, funnily enough, this is like skipping ahead a little bit, but right at the end of the movie, he talks about how he didn't keep some of the treasure. Not to give away what the treasure is, but he says, they would just put it in a museum and gather dust. And I'm like, that's literally your job in the second movie, pal. So yeah, it's a bit contradictory. You are right. But I don't think, it never really establishes what is, obviously he's an archaeologist, but what is his day-to-day job?
Yeah, so
is it just literally archaeologist, crime hunter? Is he?
It's never established.
Yeah.
Again, poor movie. Right, so then I put 28:48, the journey actually starts. Like, we know what we're doing, and that's half an hour of an hour and 58 movie, so you're a quarter of the film in, and now we've got some direction. That, for me, is piss poor film design.
Or, Tom, we have, in typical parody movie fashion, such as Scary Movie, we finished the Saw element of the movie, and now we've moved on to the Village element, and then we're going to move on to Scream, and then we're going to move on to Dusk Till Dawn, or whatever it may be.
Nah, because the film takes itself too seriously to be skits. Like,
I think it doesn't take itself seriously at all. You've even said yourself it opens with a singing number. That doesn't sound like a movie that takes itself too seriously to me.
On the back of that, going nicely into my next note, I've put Willie is comic relief ? I mean, I didn't find that funny, but I understand that that was the gist of what they were going for. I've put down here she's Spielberg's future wife. There's the scene with the animals where she grabs the snake and she throws the snake like away in India. Indy's obviously terrified of it. Nice callback to the first film because we already know as an audience that he is scared of snakes. I don't know if we ever see like throughout the movies why he's scared of snakes. It seems like a silly thing for him to be. I mean, I guess it's like the whole hero trope. It's like, you know,
Batman's afraid of bats.
Yeah.
Not he's not Snake Man. Like
no, but like you know what I mean. Like snakes
yeah.
are probably an expected part of the job. It's like being a technophobe and working like in IT. You know what I mean? Like it would make no sense.
When she's running around getting scared by all those animals, I find it very reminiscent of like Scooby Doo, where they're just running between wall and wall and door and door, and there's just something even scarier every single time. But again, that's what I'm saying for the parody element. Like it's just all a big joke. This whole movie is just all a big joke.
So we go to the palace. At this point in the movie, we still haven't been introduced to a villain. Like we don't know who the bad guy is.
No, but it's the journey of Indiana Jones being the hero.
Yeah, but like standard film design, like come on, like for me, Indiana Jones is like the first film especially. I think it's such a well-paced movie. You know who your bad guys are. Like you know you meet that Nazi guy and he's clearly a bad guy, the one who gets his hand burned. You know that Belloq's a bad guy. Whereas this, it's very much like Cloak and Dagger again, reminiscent of James Bond, like in Doctor No when he's at that compound, and it's not quite. We're not quite sure who the bad guy is. It's very reminiscent of that. So I do think this film's playing a lot of its cards of the first film was influenced by a lot of things, so let's be influenced by something of the time, which James Bond was massive at the time. Again, I feel like you've said, it is just skits.
Yep.
There's no real movie here until we get to the bit where we're in the mines, so to speak. Like, and I think that's what turned us off to this film a lot. I think I was ready for an adventure and I didn't get my adventure until like over halfway through the film.
Yeah, I think if you like I say, if you approach it with the guise of this is a not I'll keep saying the word parody because that's my word of the day, but there's so many movies prior to this, you know, I'm talking like 50s, 60s, that have those those explorations, you know, like El Dorado style, people going into the jungles, foreign lands. Like the world didn't really have that exploration. Like their knowledge of a foreign country or the history of the Aztecs was based on a movie that they'd seen, and that's kind of why it's not to be taken too seriously, I think.
I have put back to being goofy after dinner, like the whole scene where will they, won't they?
Yeah.
They're both wanting the other person to instigate sexual intercourse, and neither will do it. And it's a bit of like cutting back to between the rooms. You get a monologue from both characters, both clearly frustrate each other. For me, that was forced chemistry. They had no chemistry the entire film, and then all of a sudden they throw this scene in. And I know to a degree they did it with Marion, but it was established that there was history there, that there was something already there between them.
Controversial.
By saying like, well, yeah, perversion history is still history. Whereas these two don't have any history, like they've known each other for a day. And it goes from I hate you to I'm down to clown, like if you are, just rubbed us completely the wrong way. And unfortunately, Indy didn't get rubbed the right way.
He reached second base with that statue though, right?
He reached second base with that statue. So before that, he gets attacked in his room. He kills someone with his whip, right?
Yeah.
And when he does that, I don't know if you noticed, Indiana Jones theme plays.
Oh yeah.
And I'm just like, so is this theme associated with murder? Like, because it seemed to be like, oh, now we're back in it, boys. Like, he's killing people. Like, why was that the sting chosen at that point? I felt it was a bit off and out of place.
His whip is just a multifunctional tool. He can swing, he can pick up, you know, distant objects. He can grab his lady at the end, and he can murder people. It's a fully functional tool, Tom.
Yeah, so I feel like there was a lot more murdering in this. Like there was a lot of implied murdering in Raiders, where it was like people died off screen, but they're clearly dead. Whereas this, it was very much like, no, he has killed a man. Like, he has choked this man to death. And I just found it. I thought, hey, it was dark. It was a darker tone.
And kudos to whoever installed that ceiling fan because that held a
held
man.
a full man.
Yeah.
A full man. So anyway, so we have the attack, and then he goes on his little journey, and this for me is where the film actually starts. This is where we are back to being Indiana Jones. Because I said as well that scene where he goes through the corridor and there's like traps and stuff, that was like more or less shot for shot Indiana Jones: The Raiders of the Lost Ark, opening of that. The music was quite similar as well. It was almost back to being Star Wars-esque. And then we have the famous hat grab as well. So they've added an element to that which I didn't realise wasn't in the first film.
Yeah.
Like, that is the first time we do that. What was your thoughts on like these scenes coming back into play?
I love the trap sequence. You know, we went straight back to practical effects. The that the idea of, you know, being trapped in a room and the spikes coming down from the ceiling and the ceiling lowering is just so cliche but so enjoyable. And I'm sure it's been done in movies probably before Indiana Jones. And I'm not saying that Indiana Jones perfected it. However, what can you really fault in that scene? Because it's just so iconic, so great. And there's the comic relief of Short Round as well, when he stands on the button and then he says lean against the wall and he does it, and it's like, oh, it just so plays out so well. But yeah, all love.
Massively hit. The comic relief by Short Round massively hits. Like, I think he's such a good sidekick because it's believable. It is a believable dynamic. Whereas him and Marion, like if you not Marion, him and Willie, if you took Willie out of that film, would the film be any worse off? Probably not.
I mean, they'd be dead. But yeah, she does rescue them from that corridor.
She does rescue them, but then she knocks the button again.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
Which I did find quite funny.
But he is like just on the Short Round thing, like, and I've wrote this down. He is the Robin to Indiana Jones Batman in this movie. He's absolutely Indiana Jones could not have done this without Robin. He would have been dead, and at the same time, he's that obvious father figure to the orphan, for God's sake. It is literally just Robin next to Batman.
It's Robin, yeah, 100%.
And who's my favourite character? Robin.
My question is, though, what happened to that kid?
Yeah, no, that is an unanswered question. Maybe I don't know if it comes in any of the other movies.
I don't either. No.
Yeah, we'll find out. I doubt it though. I think
I don't think it does.
Yeah.
I think it's a shame because I think their dynamic is amazing, and I think they put themselves in a hole because the prequel, this character's never in any of the other. Well, it's not in. He's not in Raiders.
Yeah.
Why didn't he bring him back in 3? Because I know in 3, like jumping ahead, but 3 I think is my favorite, and I only seen it as a kid. I don't think I've seen it since, but I remember really loving that film. And I think I attribute a lot of Indiana Jones like to that movie, but they do put Sean Connery in and make like Indy the sidekick almost. So I don't know if that was a note that was taken forward of like, this really worked, how can we do this again?
He's the old Batman.
Yeah.
Batman. We're just gonna draw these comparisons the whole way through.
Star Wars and Batman, that's all this film is made up of. So after the trap, we see the sacrifice.
Yeah, we see the first heart extraction. I don't remember seeing. Kalima. I don't remember seeing when I was a kid. Maybe it was a cut version, because obviously it probably would have been on ITV daytime, so maybe they cut some of it out. But it's quite graphic. I mean, the practical effects are bad, but it's
awful.
Yeah, where he puts his hand through the chest and brings the heart out. I remember the heart being out and the heart bursting into flame later, but he actually puts his fingers through that sternum, man, and just grabs that heart. I thought it was more like he transported it to his hand in my head.
So I think I thought the same, but then like I know I'd watched it recently. I remember it happening, thinking, Jesus Christ, like this is like Friday the 13th, Freddy Krueger kind of stuff now. Right. So one thing I want to circle, and I want to circle massively, is Indy sees this. Yeah, there's no one blocking his view.
Yeah.
He sees this and sees what happens. He even says that man is still alive. Why is he such a skeptic in the first film then?
Yeah. I think this, for me, you make a really interesting point, but there's all these little things of, there's still that element of like, this could be trickery. Like, trickery and deceit, because it's not it's not ridiculous, like, to see, you know, like, oh, this is a human heart, and it's like just a goat's heart or whatever it might be. And it bursting, even if it bursting into flame, like, have you never seen a magician just create fire out of his hands? I think there's all those little things of like you can still you can still deny it. There's still a scientific explanation for some of it. But as we go on, he does start to appreciate more the mystery of it and the mysticism and the magic. And I think by the end of the movie, I think he is a believer in more mystical things. There's also voodoo used in the movie as well.
Yes, there is voodoo used in the movie, which, like, I don't know about you, but when I saw this, and whenever voodoo came up, I was terrified this would be a real life problem I'd have to deal with. That and quicksand.
Quicksand, yeah.
I always thought these were two things that were going to be a big part of my life.
Somebody gets your hairs and puts them on that doll.
Yeah, I was like, oh my god, like, I need to wear a hat all the time. Like
my daughter, the same daughter who thought it was Gordon Ramsay, made a hilarious point when she saw the voodoo doll, because Short Round goes to rescue and get the voodoo doll off the villain. And she was like, "Oh, is the kid going to get the voodoo doll and start controlling Indy?" And like, I was like, "That's hilarious!" Like, he's going to be backflipping and karate chopping and all this.
That would have been class.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've just put like little notes really about him being a skeptic and like how's this possible. So as well, I don't know if you caught this or I don't know if it's like actually something that is right, but I feel like Indy acknowledges that he's prequel protected because someone mentions him like, "Oh, you could die," and he says the line, "Maybe, but not today," and it's almost like a wink to say like, "I can't die because this is the past," and like we all know there's a film set in 1935. So don't know how I feel about that.
Almost as if, Tom, it's a parody.
Yeah.
Word of the day.
I hate this. Right, nearly at the end of the film, kind of. So we've got the confrontation. So Indy gets captured, and so does the kid, and so does Willie. They all get captured, and the villain tries to give rationale behind their actions, and the British get blamed quite a bit. I don't really see why that was relevant.
Yeah.
I guess it's kind of a play on, like, you know, how the British pretty much raped the land for Indian people and took everything from them. But was it needed? Was it like, oh, you guys are the real villains?
Yeah, you make a good point. I mean, he's coming in as the American as well and being like, I ain't got nothing to do with these people. Yeah. I'm just here to look at the diamonds, man. Like.
And then I've mentioned the voodoo and someone stands on the doll and he still doesn't believe, and I'm just like, There's more weight that gets added onto his skepticism that is like, oh, I don't think this still carries.
What? I mean, the voodoo, he never sees the voodoo doll, so we can discount that one. I'm sorry,
but like I understand that people get back pain, but my God, this man is dying.
Like, I would be so pissed off because he's fighting that guy, and he how many times does he get stabbed? About 10 times in a row. Yeah, I'll be fucking livid. Once or twice is bad enough, but like 10 times in a row, I'd be absolutely, I'd be raging.
Like you would find a gun, right, and shoot the kid.
Right? Oh, but the kid was. But anyway, coming back to that, the kid was mind controlled, which also Indiana Jones was.
Yeah, so I've got that. I've got that at the start. So I mentioned that he drinks the blood, or they force him to drink the blood. And I put, was that like a bit of a clue at the start of the film where he got poisoned? Is it like, you know, we've linked it back in that he's susceptible to poisoning?
It's his kryptonite.
It's his kryptonite. So then I put Sacrifice Volume 2. So we've got Bad Indy. And one thing I did put with this is I feel like Harrison Ford looks to have fun with this. I feel like he really leaned into being bad.
He does make a good bad guy. He's got that look, hasn't he? And the look in his eyes, and evil.
And it was very much like when she's spotting him and he just starts chanting. Like, I thought that was like, oh my God, like he's actually doing some good acting here. Like, I'm all about this.
On that same topic, and I've wrote this down as well. And honestly, I don't know whether it's just my softness of my old age coming in or because I've got kids. But I do have 2 daughters, and if there's a daddy-daughter scene where the daughter's talking about how much she loves her dad, I'm away. I can't watch Mulan without breaking into tears, man. But when Short Round's like really trying his hardest to rescue Indy, and he's like, "I love you," I was like, I got a tear in my eye, man. I got choked up there.
It's good. It's believable. Like I said, their relationship all the way through is so believable. I loved it. Right, so I picked up something and I played it back because I was like, did that really happen? So the doors open to the pit. Did you notice the sound effect?
The lightsaber sound.
Yeah. What was that about?
I don't know. Is that just a sound of hot that we use, or is that like, I don't know. I don't know where it originates from.
I'm glad you caught it because I thought I was going nuts. This is a stretch.
I made my daughter pause the movie, and I was like, "Get me the timing of that because I need to make a note of that." But yes, we are of the same ilk, Tom. I can't hear a Star Wars sound effect and not register it straight away.
So, I feel like with that in there, that's gotta be just stolen, right? You can't, because Star Wars was huge at the time, like especially by 1984. Like, it's in its heyday. How is that in there? I mean, is it an Easter egg? Is George Lucas like, put it in there, mate? Like, you can do what you want.
They're besties, Spielberg and Lucas.
They're besties. Did you know they were in the film?
I did not.
So you know the scene with the scene with Dan Aykroyd?
Yeah.
They're just two people in the background.
Oh wow! Okay, brilliant. I thought you were going to say like I was going to make a prediction.
George Lucas was the bad guy.
Yeah.
He was the guy doing Caliban.
No, I thought he was like Steven Spielberg was going to step in as the stunt double for the sexy time scene. Like, I'll take this one, Harrison. Don't worry.
I was going to say, actually, speaking of stunt double, I'm pretty sure that 90% of the stunts in this aren't done by Harrison because he broke his back.
Harrison Ford has took some shit from these movies.
So, Indiana Jones franchise wasn't kind to Harrison Ford's body as the second outing as the cool archaeologist marked the second major injury for the actor. While shooting, Ford suffered a spinal injury from riding the elephants.
There was also the minecart scene. I really wanna do a whole deep dive into this at some point, but some of that was stop motion with little animatronic puppets. Why did you hate it?
I just hated it. I just felt it looked cheap.
It was 84, man.
Yeah, but it looks like, come on, we've had boulders coming at him. We've had a chase scene where there was actual cars and stuff in the first film. Like, this to me felt a downgrade to the first film's effects. And I get it. It won best visual effects, but for me, like, you compare the first film and the second film, I just felt that minecart scene was a bit meh.
Yeah. Well, it was a mix of stop motion and go motion, which isn't something that's used very much because, as you probably established, it's a bit shit sometimes. If you do it badly, it's very easy to do it badly.
It's really easy to fuck it up.
Yeah, but I liked it. I thought it was believable enough, but the dimensions and the proportions of some of the dolls did look a little bit strange.
Yeah, it was a bit scuffed. Yeah. I think if you'd watched it back in the day with like the graininess, it would have been fine.
Yeah,
because we're watching all this stuff in 4K now.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's move on to Act 3 then, and we can tie this sucker up. So, there's the big fight scene in the pit. So Indy fights the big guy, which is a reflection on him fighting the big guy in the first film with the plane. The guy dies in an equally gruesome way as the first guy does in the first film.
Yeah. Was Indiana Jones trying to save him at one point when he starts getting sucked in to the? Because I felt like if you watch it, it does seem like he's like basically like, and now we're fighting. However, this is pretty fucked up. I shouldn't be crushed to death here. Come on, pal. And then it almost looks as though Indiana Jones is trying to help him, and then he just kind of goes, I can't help you.
Yeah. I don't know. I picked it up as if to say, like, you just tried to crush me with this. I'm not helping you. So maybe you read that scene different ways. The film plays with magic more, so the voodoo doll, it's more blatant. The kid, I put the kids learned from Indy. Is it the fighting when he fights the kid? I think it kind of comes across that he's a small Indy, which is quite nice, because it shows that, like, again, anyone could be Indy really. It's just,
well, anybody can be Batman as well, and Robin learns from Batman. But there's the cinematography of the scene where he's fighting the big guy, and then in the background, you can see the kid Short Round. Oh, so good, beautifully filmed, Very well.
Like I said, when they enter that trap scene, the film becomes a film. The film becomes Indiana Jones. It's all the guff before that I found so boring and so off tone. Yeah, so I've put minecart chase less authentic action scene than the first one, and like you say, again, I'm happy to kind of give some points back for that because it might have just been that at the time it looked better than it does now because we've obviously polished all these movies up.
Yeah. I mean, how
found...
else would you do that in 1984 though? You know what I mean? Like, and
Yeah,
make it look good.
And to be honest, like I would be the first person to complain if that was CGI and not practical effects. So the fact there's some practicality in there, I think kudos to trying something. And it is taking a risk because a lot of sequels nowadays are just do the first film again. That's all it is. Whereas this film does take some risks. So I think kudos to that as well. I think it tries something completely different. And I think, unfortunately for me, a lot of it does not land. The water, I hated this because
it was small scale.
What?
Because it was small scale. It was like miniatures with water coming out. Is that what you didn't?
Oh no! I didn't even pick that up. It was more that was a bucket of water that somehow filled that entire cave, even though the cave had blatant parts where there was holes. And I was like, the water's just been directed towards the main characters. Like, just make it a mine shaft. Why did you have to add the element of like other bits?
You know what? You're absolutely right. However, I've got my get out of jail free card, which is just it's a parody. There's a limited amount of water in this bucket, Tom. But you are right. Like it could have been easily been that's like the wall or the ceiling, and above that's a river or something.
Yeah, like there was no need for it to be just a bucket of water.
Why did he even do it as well? Like, what was his thought process there? It's like, what I'm gonna do, right, is I'm gonna just drown them. Well, that's my plan.
Water can't come backwards, so he knew he was safe. Like, luckily for him, water only flows in one way. And it just, for me, like you said, break the dam. Like, if there was a dam, he was like, cool, like, we're just going to flood this entire tunnel.
Release the river.
So, we're at the bridge of Khazad-dûm. And I like the bridge. It's a real bridge. I've also got that Indiana Jones is a murderer. Like, he kills all the people on this bridge.
Yeah, but he's defending himself, though, Tom. It's not like...
But why is it that he takes so long to cut this bridge and everyone just watches him? Why is someone not rushing him going, whoa, like, this guy's nuts, like, stop this man?
Yeah. Or let's just go off the bridge because he's trapped.
Yeah, exactly.
We hold all the cards here. Like...
just let him cut it, but like, we'll find the stones.
Yeah.
Doesn't the guy say, like, oh, we'll find the stones exactly. And drop them? It's fine.
Instead, though, we're going to go on the bridge as well, just for the hell of it.
It was...
But it's, again, parody. Yeah.
And then, obviously, we've got crocodiles. I like the crocodiles, even though the crocodiles look like ants, but they somehow see the humans up there and go, whoa, boys, we're about to be fed.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
One criticism of the crocodiles is the absolute reused scene of them eating, which I don't know what it is, but it's not a fake human. It just looks like they're covered in a sheet or something. They've just thrown a sheet in the midst of the crocodiles, and they're like, "We'll just reuse that clip. That's fine."
Yeah. And then I've got the British turn up, but also Indy uses magic.
Does. Finally believes, he becomes a believer.
Just again, why was it not a sequel? It would have made so much more sense as a sequel because he's got that bit of knowledge about the Ark, and he could have just been like, "All right, let's give this magic a try." Then, we've seen it in action.
Obviously, at the end of Raiders, he also says, "Close your eyes." So, without that little bit of pre-knowledge beforehand, maybe Indiana Jones would have had his eyes open the whole time and would have been dead along with all the Nazis.
Yeah, maybe. I guess that's one way you could spin it, but I don't know. I feel like that a lot more could have been done to tie these two movies together. Because if you watch these movies, and let's say you didn't know that this was a franchise, and you watch them separately, I think the films hold up on their own and don't need to be part of each other. But problem is, they turned Indiana Jones into a franchise, and they blatantly did it at the start of this film by having Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Yeah, as we've established, the first title of the first movie is Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah, so I think they've trapped themselves with this film. I think they go for franchise and add personally think it would have been better if this was just an adventure outside of any canon.
I think as well, which is an interesting point, if I do say so myself, what I think there's a strong argument to be made here where you should watch these movies in canon order, in chronological order. Can't even say it. Where you start with this movie, where there's no reason to not start with this movie and move on to Raiders as a second movie.
I want to talk about the rating of this film. What was the rating of this film? Do you know?
So I haven't researched this fully, but I believe I stumbled across this where this is one of the first movies where they started to introduce new ratings, at least in the UK.
So, do you know what other film? There was 2 films. There was this and something else. Do you know what the other film was?
I have absolutely no idea. Is it a 12 as well, or 15?
13 rating.
13.
Yeah, which didn't transfer over here. I think it was 12 over here. So the film came out. It had 2 months of like viewing, and then because obviously films used to last ages in the cinema, and then it got changed to a 13. It was one of the first films. The other film was The Batman by Tim Burton.
That's a 15 in the UK.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it 15?
I believe so.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my VHS knowledge of having all of the original Batmans. Yeah, of having the VHS. But I certainly, obviously, the cultural difference of just America and UK, even that shows as well.
Yeah.
But that's interesting.
So, interesting that you've put so many Batman references in here, and actually Batman was the other film.
It all ties together, doesn't it, Tom?
Right.
It all comes short round.
Jesus,
nice.
What a pull. Right, so we're going to rank this.
This is where we've got a problem. Because I've been promoting how much I like this movie, and you've been absolutely shitting on it.
Have you got any final thoughts on this movie itself?
Just that P word. It's a parody. I've come to the realization myself that, and this is just my opinion. Again, it doesn't. Nobody has to accept this as well. But I think this is Steven Spielberg paying homage to all of the films he loves, all of the things that inspired him to become a director, and that just continues throughout the whole Indiana Jones franchise. It's a parody, and I loved the first movie. I think the elements that we've talked about, in particular Short Round, boost this over for me. And I would actually put it out there for some people that if you've never watched the Indiana Jones movies and you're interested in them, maybe you should start with this one. Maybe you should have that perspective yourself and see, because it's not going to change anything. It's not like Star Wars. You don't need to watch them in a particular order necessarily. But I have a lot of positivity about this. And I really like the movie. I really like both movies, but I vote this higher up. What are your final thoughts on the movie, Tom?
I just think that as a movie, it lacks. It lacks in a lot of places. I think it's got some good quality in here, especially with the Kalimar stuff. I think like the sacrifice stuff's really good. Like, I love that they take a risk with this film, and like I said, I don't feel like it pays off. I feel like a lot of it falls flat. I feel like after having this conversation, I'm much more Team Short Round than I was before. I knew I was very much into like sort of his character dynamic, but after your thoughts, I'm like, yeah, actually, you know, he did a smashing job in this film.
Stole the show.
Yeah, 100%. I thought Willie was annoying. I could not abide that character. Any scene she was in was just grating. It was annoying. I felt like the love scene was forced for the sake of it. I just, I really struggle with this movie, and I think that it is because it's a slower pace that I'm not prepared for with an Indiana Jones movie. Like I said, if this was a film on its own merits and it wasn't, if this was the first film and then we got Raiders second, 100% this film would be like, oh, this is your foundation and you built upon this, well done, like, stand-up job. But because we started with such a strong movie, I feel like this one drags the franchise down, and I think that's probably going to be a common theme after the third film. But again, I've not seen the third film in ages, so yeah, I could also feel the same with that as well.
No, that's true. Well, I was going to suggest, this is in my opinion, that we should drop Raiders to more of a B rating and put this to A rating. But I feel like you're not on the same frame of mind as me.
I'm not the same frame of mind, so I initially wrote down a C.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was at a C for this movie because of how, I guess, bored I was, and how, like, I don't know, like I said, a lot of ideas, not a lot of it landing. I keep referring back to this lightsaber sound as well, which really, I don't know why, it just really pissed us off. I was like, why is this here? Like, you've tried to stand on your own 2 feet with this franchise by moving away from Star Wars, and you throw a lightsaber sound in. You had Club Obi-Wan. I'm like, like, I think they're the same universe, you know. I think the canon is they're part of the same universe.
What? Star Wars and Indiana Jones?
Star Wars and Indiana Jones, yeah.
I mean, okay, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. I guess it could
be anything.
Yeah. Fucking hell, Indiana Jones going to find a lightsaber in one of these movies one of these days.
Bloody hope so. The boat, jumping out the plane with the boat, hated that. The minecart scene, like I said, whilst I gave it back some points, I just found that. I know you're going to say parody, but I just didn't find it believable. Whereas I found some of the stunts in the first film more believable and more like easy to swallow in terms of disbelief.
Yeah, everything you said makes sense. It's just I think that the campness, the tongue-in-cheekness, it really rammed it down your throat. But I didn't think that was a bad thing. I think it was just literally being like, you know, don't take this too seriously because it's not supposed to be serious. We'll start the movie with a fucking song. Like it doesn't have to be an action adventure. This one, it's a bit of amalgamation of everything.
Yeah, and I think the problem is that I've got a pre-knowledge of Indiana Jones and what the expectation is of it being an adventure, and I think that's why this film comes across so harsh, because it's not meeting my expectation, which I guess is a good thing because sequels should always look to defy expectations, but I know that in the third film they go back to formula, or to quote Norman Osborn, back to formula.
I'm somewhat of an archaeologist myself.
Something of an archaeologist myself. I'm happy to go B, but I can't in good faith move Raiders down.
Ooh. Okay. Well, this friendship's over, so never mind.
B plus.
We can put it as a B. But
B plus,
however, we'll move forward with this with the expectation that I want you and any of the listeners at home as well, or any of the viewers who watch the movie, to kind of think about the idea of, if this is a parody movie, if it's just tongue in cheek, does that change your perspective on it? Because it's certainly, I've only watched some of the newer ones maybe once, and it's been on the background on Christmas Day and things like that. And I've not seen the newest one yet. I'm going to watch that fresh for this podcast.
Can't wait. I haven't either.
Yeah,
I can't wait.
But I'm honestly, I was hating the idea of watching the new ones because I've got my own personal opinion about them. I think franchises should just be let to die. But with the understanding now in my head that it's kind of a parody, and it's kind of parody in itself as well, that I'm a lot more open to the idea of them now. I don't mind that we're gonna get fucking aliens and shit coming into this, because it's a parody. It's not. It's a joke. It's not supposed to be too serious.
Yeah, and you know what it is. Maybe that's something that just never was communicated. Maybe you've picked up what Stephen was trying to get across. So with that, I guess we'll talk about next week, which is The Last Crusade. So the film came out in 1989, so there's a bit of a difference in terms of time with this one. Again, it's directed by Steven Spielberg, so that'll be the next movie that we go through. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Have you seen this one? Have you seen Last Crusade?
I've seen Last Crusade. Probably seen it a couple of times, but again, many years ago. So I'm looking forward to looking at it with a sort of fresh adult perspective. And most importantly, Tom, with the eyes of parody, to see what I think about it that way.
See, I don't remember this one being a parody. I remember there being like a really good trap scene at the end, which I was all about. Like, that for me was like, this is class. So I'm looking forward to seeing that scene again. But anything before that, I can't really remember. I can't remember why Sean Connery's like captured at one point. I don't know. I'm looking forward to it.
I mean, I'm just gonna like throw a couple of things out there that we get like knights turning up and stuff. It feels like there could be some parody elements in this, Tom, but we'll see.
It's like Knights of the Round Table or something, isn't it? Okay. I'm excited. I'm excited.
I'm excited
to watch that soon. Cool. Right. With that, we'll close the book on Temple of Doom. I will never watch this film ever again. No, I might. You know what it is? Give it a couple of years, I might watch it and think, oh, this one's a parody. It's probably an S film. But we'll see. That's a wrap on today's episode of Canon Fodder podcast. If you did enjoy this, please do leave us a like or comment with anything that you did enjoy. Feedback on YouTube at Canon Fodder podcast. You can also find us at TikTok with the same handle. That's at Canon Fodder podcast. The Canon is spelt with one N. We have an email address should you wish to contact us that way. We accept questions, feedback, anything you like, really. We might turn it into a segment down the line. Our email address is thecanonfodderp@gmail.com. That's the Canon spelled CANON, Fodder FODDER, just the letter P, @gmail.com. But thanks for listening. I hope everyone has a lovely week. Take care now.
Bye.